Chapter 5 midterm review. What we did in Chapter 5 was we did all kinds of different formulas for a line. We also talked about function form. So the first type of formula that we talked about was slope-intercept form. Who can tell me what slope-intercept form is? Stephanie? Very good. Y equals mx plus b. Now, the only two things I have to know for slope-intercept form are m and b. M is slope, b is y-intercept. Okay? Now, in order to graph it, again, the only two things I need to know are m and b. B is my y-intercept, so it's where the line crosses the y-axis. M is my slope, so I would do rise over run to find my next point. But when they give us equations already, like they did right here in these first two problems, they just want us to rewrite it in the order so it looks like slope-intercept form. Y's got to be by itself. The x and slope have got to be first, and then the b or the y-intercept comes last. So here's my y. I need it to be by itself. So what would I do first? Vincent?
You would add 3x.
Add 3x, very good. Add 3x on both sides. Y is equal to 3x plus 5. Is this in slope-intercept form? Yes, it is. So the next equation, I've got one more step than I did in the one before it. What would I do first here? Vincent?
You would write the formula down and then plug in your numbers.
I don't want to plug in my numbers. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Look to the side of it. Not the fine slope one, but this one right over here.
You would subtract 6x.
Very good. Subtract 6x. Remember, we do not want to divide by 5 yet, even though we say, oh, I need to get y by itself. Okay, so we're going to say 5y equals negative 6x minus 10. Then what would I do? Divide everything by 5. Very good. So what I have now is y equals negative 6 over 5. You say, wait a second, that's a fraction. That's okay, because remember, m is rise over run. Then minus, what's 10 over 5? 2. Okay, finding slope. So what I want to do now is I need to find slope, and they've given me 2 points. So who can tell me the equation that I use to find slope? Valentina? Very good. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we label our ordered pairs x1, y1, x2, y2, and we just plug in. 6 minus negative 2, which is going to change it to a plus sign. Then 2 minus negative 1, which again changes it to a plus sign. 6 plus 2 is 8. 2 plus 1 is 3. Here is my m. They don't want me to try to plug it back in any equations. They want me to do anything else to it other than just say, here's my slope, 8 over 3. So my rise is 8, so I'd go up 8, and run is 3, so I'd go over towards the positive side, 3. The next two problems that we have are graph the equation and label m and b. M is our slope, b is our y-intercept. Those are the only two things we need to know in order to graph an equation. So let's label m. What is m in y equals x plus 1? Cole? 1. Very good. Even though I don't see it, I know it's there. How would I write the slope in rise over run form? 1 over 1. And my b is what? Nishan, what's my b? 1. Very good. So if I draw my graph, I'm just going to draw a little coordinate plane right here because it doesn't need to be big. Where would I place my first point? Up 1. So it's on the y-axis at 1 because that's my b. And then where would I go from this point to find my next point? Up 1 and over 1. Very good, because it's a positive 1, so I go up 1. And over 1 is also a positive 1, so I go over towards the positive side and just draw my line straight through. Remember, When we are graphing these, we need to draw a line through the points because we're graphing a line. We're not graphing two dots on a coordinate plane. So the next problem, they want me to do the exact same thing. What is m in this equation? 3/4, very good. What is b? -2, very good. Don't forget that minus sign right there tells me it's a -2. So if I were to graph where am I going to place my first point? Cole?
You go down 2 on the y-axis.
Very good. So I go to -2 on the y-axis, and then where would I go to find my next point, Cole?
You go up 3,
Very good.
and you go across 4.
Very good. Up 3 over 4, and place my point here. Remember, the 0 does count as 1, so we'd go up 1, 2, 3. And then we would draw our line straight through the points. And that's how you would graph an equation in slope-intercept form. So the next slide that we're going to do talks about functions and formulas. The first type of problem is solve the function when x is equal to 10. Well, I know when I'm dealing with function form, it's going to be written as f of x. Well, these type of problems, sometimes function form is y equals, but in this case, it's f of x is equal to 1/2 x plus 6. X is equal to 10 is what they want me to solve this as. So when I have this in function form, where am I going to plug in a 10? Everywhere we see an x. So we're going to say f of 10 is equal to 1/2 times 10 plus 6. Now, am I ever going to try to solve for f so I would eventually divide by 10 to get f by itself? No, because what this is telling me is for the function of 10. That means when I plug in 10 as my input, I'm just going to solve this side so I can see what I get as my output. So I'm going to leave f of 10 in every single step that I have. What's 1/2 times 10? 5. Then 5 plus 6 is 11. So for the function of 10, or for the input of 10, I have an output of 11. And this is how you have to write your answer, because I want to know what you plugged in for x. If I don't see f of 10, I have no idea what number you plugged in to get 11. Okay? Now, the next 4 problems that I have are just formulas. I want you to write the formula for each, because these are exact midterm questions. These are the only 4 formulas that I'm having you write on the midterm. Now, there will be some other formulas that you have to know to use, but other than that, these are the only ones that you actually have to write, and they count as questions. So, slope of a line. What is a formula I would use to find slope? y2. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What about slope-intercept form? What's slope-intercept form, Cole?
Y minus y1.
Slope-intercept?
Oh, y equals mx.
Very good. Y equals mx plus b. What's standard form? Vincent?
Y minus y1 equals.
That's point slope. Valentina?
ax plus by equals c.
Very good. Ax plus by equals c. And then what's point slope form? Zachary?
Y minus y1 equals m to the parentheses x minus x1.
Very good. Times x minus x1. Okay? These are the 4 formulas that you will have to know for your midterm. So on the next slide, we are going to work with slope-intercept form. And we're going to do 3 different equations. And what they want us to do is they want us to write these equations, or the information that they give us, they want us to use the information that they've given us to write an equation in slope-intercept form. We already talked about that in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form, I need an m, which is a slope, and a b, which is a y-intercept. That does not mean I can just use any old number for y to plug in, because it doesn't work that way. The y-intercept is a specific place on the graph that this line is going to cross through. Whenever we first learned slope-intercept, we we did these problems a certain way to find B when we were missing. But now that we've gone all the way through chapter 5, there is another formula that you did not know at the time we learned this lesson that you now know that we can use that makes it much simpler. And I'm going to show you. First of all, like we already said, in order to write an equation in slope-intercept, we need an m and a b. So look at this first problem right here. I have an m, but do I have b? No. But what do I have? A point, an x and a y. So I have a point and a slope, right? So I could maybe use point-slope formula. Yep. So let's plug that into point-slope formula and see if we can make the equation in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to say y minus y1. What would be y1? 0 equals m, which is 5, times x minus x1. But what's x1? Negative 2, so I'm going to make it a positive 2. Now, all I would need to do to put this in standard form is do distributive property and rearrange the terms so they're in standard form. Let me ask you this. Y minus 0. Do I really need to write that minus 0? Nope, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to write y equals 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 2 is 10. Is this in slope-intercept form? Yes, it is. What is my b? 10. Now, here's the way that I taught you back when we learned this because we did not know the point slope. What I taught you was, okay, since we don't have a b, what I need to do is I need to use slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, plug in what I know to solve for b. So we would say x and y. So I would use 0 equals m, which is 5, times negative 2, which is x, plus b. And then I would multiply 0 equals negative 10 plus b. I would add 10. And I would get b equals 10. So I still get the same y-intercept, but now that I know m and b, I would go back to slope-intercept form and plug in those numbers. Y equals 3x plus 10. I'm sorry, 5x plus 10. So you would get the exact same answer, just maybe a little more difficult. It does not matter to me which method you use, as long as you get the correct right answer. So on the next problem here, who thinks that point-slope form is easier to use? Raise your hand. Okay, so the majority, let's use point-slope form. So I'm going to say y minus what? 2 equals 7 times x minus 4. So now let's do distributive property. Y minus 2 equals 7x minus 28. What do I need to do to get y by itself? William? Add 2. Very good. And I get y equals 7x minus 26. Now it is in slope-intercept form. Can I ever leave a number in front of y for slope-intercept, like 3y equals something? No, I'd have to get y by itself. So last but not least in slope-intercept form, remember, for slope-intercept, we need an m and a b. The last few equations, we've had an m, so in a point, so we plugged it into point-slope. But on this one, did they tell me a point? I'm sorry, yes, they told me a point. But did they tell me a slope? No. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to use my formula so that I can find slope. M equals 6 minus 0 over negative 2 minus 2. 6 minus 0 is 6. Negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. 6 over negative 4 is negative 3 over 2. You say, wait a second, the negative sign went with the 4. You put it with the 3. It doesn't matter where the negative sign is, as long as it's somewhere in the equation. I always like to, or somewhere in the fraction. I always like to put mine up top. Okay? Now I know m and I know a point, so I'm going to plug it into point-slope formula. Now the reason why I gave you a fraction is because there is a question on your midterm that has a fraction. So we're going to say y minus 0 equals negative 3 over 2 times x minus 2. I'm going to do distributive property. Do I need this minus 0 over here? No, so I can just scratch it out, and I'm left with y equals negative 3 over 2x. What is negative 3 over 2 times negative 2? positive 3. Now, remember that shortcut that we learned when doing standard form that, hey, if I take a fraction and I multiply it by the same number that's in the denominator, my answer will be the numerator. Do y'all remember that? That's exactly what we have here. We multiplied by 2. And since we multiplied by a negative number, okay, a negative times a negative is a positive. That's why I ended up with a positive 3 there. Okay, that is slope-intercept form and all the different types of problems you will use with it. So the next type of formula that we are going to use is standard form. What is standard form? Vincent?
AX plus BY equals C.
Very good. AX plus BY equals C. In order to put an equation in standard form, I have to have an equation because standard form is just a way of ordering your terms. So I look and I say, okay, yes, I have an equation. What is A?
It's just like
8x. What is B? Negative 2y. What is C? 0, because it's on the other side. What is out of place that needs to move, Cole?
The positive 9.
The positive 9. How do I move the 9 from one side of the equation to the other?
You subtract 9.
Subtract 9. So now I'm left with 8x minus 2y equals negative 9. Is this in standard form? Yes, it is. What are the 2 rules specific to standard form, Vincent?
It can't be a negative on the first number.
Okay.
And no fractions.
All right, so rule number 1, A, the number in front of x can never be a negative number. Rule number 2, there is to be no fractions at all in standard form. So look at this next problem. We're going to have a lot of problems here. Because, first of all, what do I need to move? Because I want to get everything in the right order before I start taking care of the rules that are broken. William?
You subtract the 7 x.
Very good. We're going to subtract 7 over 5x. Remember, we never want to multiply by the reciprocal when we're just moving terms, because that's not what you do. Anytime you just want to move one term or a term from one side to the other, we always use addition or subtraction. So now I have negative 7 over 5x plus 4 over 5y equals 6. I've got 2 broken rules. Number 1 is I have a fraction. Number 2 is A is a negative number. Can I correct both of those rules with one step? Zachary, what would that be?
To multiply by negative 5.
Very good. Multiply by negative 5. Because I know in order to make it a whole number, I've got to multiply by the same number that's in the denominator. And I know to make it a positive, I need to multiply by a negative. So if I multiply by negative 5, takes care of that. But when I multiply by one thing in my equation, I multiply by everything. What am I left with as my x value? 7x, not 35. What am I left with as my next, or my y value? Negative 4. Very good, because a negative times a positive is a negative. And what am I left with as c? Negative 30. Here's your answer, just like this. Now, what happens if we don't have an equation? Remember what I said about standard form? I have to have an equation in order to solve it, or put it in standard form. So, Stephanie, what am I going to start off with? Point slope form. Very good, because they gave us a point and a slope. So I'm going to write y minus 5 equals m times x plus 3. I'm just going to do distributive property. And then I'm going to simplify, or I'm going to move the terms around that I need to move around. So 2x needs to come up here to the front, and negative 5 needs to come over here with a 6. What am I going to do to 2x to move it up? Subtract it. What am I going to do to negative 5 to move it? Add it. And I get negative 2x plus y is equal to 11. Is this in standard form? No. Cole, what do I need to do now?
You need to multiply everything by negative 1.
Very good. Multiply by negative 1. Why wouldn't I multiply by negative 2?
Because the -1, it changes the signs, but -2 would change the value.
Very good. Negative 1 just changes the sign. If I multiply by negative 2, it would change the entire number to a bigger one, and I don't want to do that. So 2x minus 1y equals negative 11. Standard form. So the last type of formula for a line we're going to talk about is point slope form. Probably the easiest form of a line. We've been using it the entire time. We've talked about in order to write an equation in point slope form, we need a point and a slope. So let's write out the formula for point slope. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So what did they give us in the first example? A point and a slope. So all I need to do is plug it in. Y minus 4 equals 3 times x minus 3. Do I need to do distributive property, simplify, combine like terms, or anything like that? Absolutely not. This is my final answer. It has to be in point slope form. So the next problem, what am I missing?
Your slope.
M. So I know a formula for that. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 7 plus 3 over negative 3 minus 2. Why was that a plus 3 on the top and not minus? Double negative. 7 plus 3 is 10. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. 10 divided by negative 5 is negative 2. Now I know an M and a point, but which one of those points do I want to use? The first, always the first, okay? So let's do y plus 3 equals negative 2 times x minus 2. Same exact thing we want to do to the last problem here. M equals 4 plus 4 over 3 plus 3. I'm left with 8 over 6, which is 4 over 3. Could I ever leave that as 8 over 6? No. Could I ever leave that as 1 1/3? No, never, because we're dealing with slope. So what am I going to write as my final answer, Caitlin? Okay, so who can help her out? Valentina?
Since you use the first point, it's going to be y plus 4 equals 4 over 3 times x plus 3.
Very good. Y plus 4, because I have a double negative, equals 4 over 3 times x plus 3 because I have a double negative. So this is the review for Chapter 5 for your midterm.